Cool. All right. So just to kind of get started a little bit, I just posted in the Slack channel a PR with kind of all the content. It was kind of a bit more work, and I had to rearrange things or whatever to use. The CNCF actually has like a project group template, and so I tried to rejigger the content into that template. Um, we hadn't really talked about voting yet, so I just kind of marked those as TBD. So, not sorry, not general voting, but like maintainer voting. So we have kind of in the README, we have it written as a facilitator, but the CNCF has this official like maintainer role, which I kind of just said in the docs. I said, we call that a facilitator, but it's got the same kind of permissions as maintainer. But we hadn't really talked about how to get more maintainers or how to remove maintainers. So I didn't want to like write anything that would impede the progress of the kind of general content being sorted out. So that's there. You shouldn't really find any new content too much. I mean, I added a bit of stuff, but it's mostly stuff like I rejiggered it. Like I just, I put this I put the when the meetings are kind of on the README, and I moved, the kind of charter content to the charter, and like that kind of thing.
Sounds good. So I'll just have a look after and then just do a looks good to me.
Yeah, pretty much that's what I was thinking. And
Mhm.
then
And then
once
we
we
can
had two,
merge.
and then we can merge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also managed to break the default branch because GitHub has apparently a UI feature that if you have an empty branch and then you create a branch that has content, it decides that's default now. And I don't have enough permissions on the GitHub repo to change the default branch. So just ignore the branch that's called charter proposal for now. So I did it as a fork and then a PR back from a fork, which is probably how I should have done it in the first place. But I didn't know that GitHub had this feature. I gotta wait for George to fix it for me. But I think I need to go. He hasn't responded on Slack, so I think I need to go and like file a proper ticket.
I think I saw your message to him and he had a little palm tree in his profile, so I think he's on vacation.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. The CNCF
Yeah,
is
and I
quite good
forget
about adding little vacation
symbols.
yeah.
Okay, I will. Yeah, so I'll file a ticket for it. I had another. Oh no, I fixed the other thing. I also created a new tag in the issues for kind of prior art, but you'll see that when you get to the content. Um, but another thing we can't do is, or at least I can't do. I don't know, Catherine. I don't know if you have more privilege on the GitHub repo than I do or not. But I also can't do is issue templates, which I was tempted to do, but we don't have many different types, so it was like whatever. But I was looking for a way to mark something prior art, and I was going to give it like a template for it, and discovered that I don't have the privilege to do that. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure we've got the same, but
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. But there it is. All right. I'm just gonna make a new template in the oh, oh, you have one already. Oh, just Jan 4th is above Feb 9.
huh?
Oh, you just didn't change the
Oh,
date.
it's sorry, it should be
Yeah, I got it.
today.
Uh,
Like
oh, you got it
because
already. You're
the,
faster than
the
me.
the one above is just a template.
No, I know. I was thinking for a minute there that February 9th was today because I was confused and because it said January, because I'm not very good with dates. But long story short, yeah. So that's the big thing I need your help with is just reviewing that and approving it. I really want to get as much of that in place as we possibly can before KubeCon, because I also have a talk there specifically about the higher ed working group. So
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I put that, the review that is on everyone, on the action items. And we had 2 action items for last time, because we want to be accountable. And I think that is done, right? Like the Lando thing, and then Curry.
Yeah,
Do you have
I created a quick outline, and if I can just share my screen real quick. So a week after the KubeCon, I'm going to host a cloud boot camp and hackathon here in Orlando. And the purpose is to really grow the awareness with students of what cloud native is and Kubernetes. So I decided to have a 2-day boot camp and hackathon. One on the first day will be on 3/29, March 29th, and then the hackathon will be on April 5th. So I needed to create some kind of agenda, and this is just a tentative agenda. But what I want to do, or what I'm going to do, is it'll be an afternoon type boot camp starting around noon. But before then, you know how conferences usually have workshops? They offer workshops before the actual conference. I thought, wouldn't it be great to allow students to take online courses ahead of time? So I had a meeting this past week with Kevlin Husser with the Linux Foundation. He's a senior training regional manager. And we had about an hour meeting about all the different types of courses that are available for people to learn about cloud native and Kubernetes. And he sent me this spreadsheet with all these courses that are available. So I'm thinking of taking 1 or 2 or 3 of these to allow students to then take the course before the actual conference. And all of these are free. Remember I had to do that action item and collect all the different type of content that's out there in courses? I think this could be part of it, and going through a lot of this content and see what's updated, what's outdated, what maybe we can use, what gaps there are that we can fill in with our open source curriculum. But I now have access to all these different courses, and I guess they're all on edX. Free, paid, e-learning. So I'm going to go through a lot of these courses to find out if any of these are usable or what we can do with those. So I was thinking of having to allowing students to take a course or 2 before the conference, but then once the conference starts, I want to actually introduce what the Cloud Native Foundation is, and see if I can ask if somebody would be a speaker for maybe an hour. And then the other goal is to have students become contributors to cloud native projects. So the next I would be showing them how to become a contribute via a workshop. The following hour, I wanted to introduce Minikube. I thought Minikube was an easy, free, kind of low-hanging fruit software to introduce to the students. And then this past week, I was watching the contributors meeting, and there was a gentleman, his name is Andy Alexander. He oversees the KubeStellar project, which is now just in Sandbox. And he was on there asking for help for contributors, people to contribute to his project. So I reached out to him, and we actually are going to start working together and allowing some of my students to be mentored and to be interns with his project. And so I'm actually going to share this agenda with him to see if he would come on and maybe introduce his project, KubeStellar, which is right here, and then maybe show the people how to contribute to his project on day 1. The other item was to expose students to certifications, and so I blocked out an hour for the CKA certification and go over that, and maybe have a representative or someone from training to speak about that. The next day on April 5th would be the hackathon. This is what I'm working with Andy Alexander on the KubeStellar, because he has like mini projects within CubeStellar that students could possibly work on. So that's the next to do, to set up a meeting with him and see how he can incorporate his CubeStellar for the hackathon, which will help his project. And then at the same time, students will learn about Cloud Native and Kubernetes and how to contribute. So that's a tentative drafted boot camp slash hackathon right now. I know there's a lot of specific information, and once I have the next version, what I can do is I can remove some specifics and then create a template to share on the GitHub site. That way others can use that template for their own boot camps and hackathons going forward. And that's all I wanted to show for today. Feedback.
I have. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm open to any feedback.
So I was gonna say, do you have a prereqs like set up and install kind of section? Because I would strongly recommend it. Just because the likelihood you get somebody walking in who doesn't have Git installed, or whatever, it might be a good idea to kind of see what you can about getting all that stuff set up beforehand. The other thing I was going to suggest is I don't know if you've used Podman Desktop, but Podman Desktop actually has as built-in part of it a way to install Kind. So you just say, once you have Podman Desktop installed, you just click on Kind and off you go, and now you have it. It kind of depends on how much you want to teach them about like getting Kind installed. But again, if you want to show them the consumption of it, it might be better to recommend. So what I did, I actually just literally did this in a class a couple days ago.
Okay.
So I had them have Podman Desktop installed before they came to class, and then and then kind of did the Kind install while we were there, because it's not very expensive, and that worked okay. Not more than the normal problems, but just it might make life a little bit easier.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much. And again, I'm going to get with Andy as well and see how I can sort of massage this towards his project, and hopefully get more students involved in his project, and bring on if any of you know any other project team leaders that need contributors. Again, I have 8 students right now doing mentorships with OpenStack. We're looking at having 2 students do mentorships in the summer with Andy and CubeStellar. So if you guys know of anybody who needs contributors, please let me know.
Are you thinking, like, when you say mentorship, like, are you thinking like this is like an internship or in that kind of scenario? Or are you thinking like they're kind of just working on it and periodically asking questions of them?
The latter. They're working with them, but at the same time, they're actually in one of my seminar courses. So each week they have to give a status update, what they're working on, what their blockers are, and what are they working on next week, and that's where they get graded. But they're working under an industry expert. Now, I do have cloud internships also, but that's totally separate, and that's actually a process to have them set up as interns. But they're they're doing the same thing. They're working under an industry expert. It's just on this side of it, they're in the intern program. So I want to have students work back to back, 2 semesters.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is because, like, most of the people I know, their internship programs are completely maxed out. But I might know some people who could, kind of do periodic check-ins with a student, rather than, kind of a full-blown internship. That's why I was kind of asking the question. So I can reach out and ask a couple of people and see what's out there. I don't know, Justin, did you have anything?
On this or another action item?
No, on this, like, as in, I don't know if you need some students on, some of your work.
Sort of, but it's hard. I mean, the startup costs and stuff like that are pretty substantial, and we already have a pretty big pool. So I'll say Probably not. But if I can figure out which projects were most welcoming when we had students do the security assessments. If there are, those will probably be more welcoming to student contributors from your group also, if you're interested in that, Corey.
Okay. Certainly.
Yeah, just do me a favor and like ping me on Slack afterwards, and
Okay.
it'll take me like a couple days, but I can get you some info about that.
Okay. Catherine, anything? Should I clean
think
this
that's out
up?
of my wheelhouse. I mean, it sounds good, but yeah, I would defer
Okay.
to the hackathon
Okay.
experts.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'll stop sharing now. Thank you.
And I think what we were discussing last time, Justin, is maybe because we were always talking about doing this module that people can, and maybe leveraging the hackathon thing to which would be even smaller, and say like, well, let's like now Corey is working on it, then he'll contribute it, and then from there let's improve it, right, with feedback and make it something, and then make that as part of and then that can grow to more of a module. Because maybe that's like an even smaller thing, and also maybe even easier to kind of get people to try. It's not like, hey, here is something you should do, incorporate, or
yeah, I think we need to make sure. So one of the biggest things here, and this is all going to segue into something I want to talk about in a little bit, is there's a different type of thing that people at different schools will want to consume. And the type of thing, like I have taught at a community college many, many years ago. And then being on the other side where I'm like a tenured professor at a Research One university looking at like curriculum things from this end, it's like completely different. Like it could not be more different in how this all works. And so I think we want to think about how we want to target this and who we want to go for and what we want out of it. The LF has been very good at creating things that are good for like kind of like a trade school, sort of like things like that, where it's like, students are just supposed to learn a skill in this area, but not really necessarily understand the fundamental principles behind why all this stuff works. It can all just sort of be magic, but I know that if I do this, then this thing happens. And that's like a very useful set of skills to have, but it's different enough than what the the more, I don't know what to call it, but the more academic institutions want to have, that we have to figure out where we're targeting, and some modules will work really well in one, some will work really well in the other, some might work in both. But yeah, I'm curious to see more about this.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. And I think my, kind of at least my goal with this group was actually to focus more on, I don't necessarily wouldn't necessarily call it theoretical, but kind of towards the, design, architecture, and kind of approaches to problems and things like that, rather than mechanics of, like my common example, because I actually wrote a whole workshop on it, is like, how to set up and use Tekton. Which is a very different, which I think is a well covered content area, because I think it's it's not only very tactical, but it's also very defined, right? It's a very, kind of like, it's a nice little box, right? So what I was really hoping more for this group, in a sense, was that we were going to be focusing more like on the things like, I'm teaching in one of my classes right now, which is like, the assignment I just gave yesterday was, hey, go find, these multiple data sets. One was about blue bike usage and one was about rainfall. Go extract it from wherever, load it into a containerized database, then use another containerized database for a transformational opportunity, and do the transformation, and then spit out the average, whether basically I kind of, like I said, it was just an assignment on a project. So I kind of was like, and tell me, or show me a trend line that says blue bike usage versus rainfall. Do people not use bikes as much when it rains? Which seems plausible. But that's the kind of thing that I was thinking about more than, like I said. And so I think I agree with you, assuming that my example is one that aligns with your thinking, Justin.
Sure. Yeah, I think it can fit in that context. I think the like wrapping around it of understanding what the fundamental concepts are at a really much deeper level. So I'll use a different example. Like if I were teaching a CIS class, in a CIS class, I might walk through how to use tar, look at all the common command line flags you need to use on tar to create tar balls. Look at things like what happens, how you can append things to tar balls and what that does and so on, right? If I'm teaching a computer science class, then that topic is going to be on the fundamentals of how compression works. And on topics like historical problems that people have had with archives that support adding things multiple times and how signatures get checked over the wrong item or other things like that occur, right? And so they're both covering tar, and I might show and use tar as I walk through some example in the computer science classroom. But the fundamental isn't like the Z option does compression, and you need to use a C and X or a T option to indicate the operation you're doing on the tar ball. And F indicates the file name is going to be provided there rather than via standard input, and so on, right? So the yeah. So let me can we segue into what something I wanted to chat about here with this, because I think we're on the same page here, and I think it's kind of teed up.
Yeah, I thought that was what you wanted to chat about, but yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I want to chat about is that, but this is a smaller part of a bigger thing. So, by the way, I was elected to the governing board of the OpenSSF, and they also have an initiative kind of like the higher ed initiative that is here in the CNCF. And kind of in both cases, there's like a coalition of the very willing that all are fairly folks with different backgrounds. It's not like in either group we have 10 people that are all from like the same environment that have exactly the same goal. And so and the effort that they had in the OpenSSF to try to get adoption, they've actually been fairly successful at getting folks in the government and other things to be interested in what's happening for the OpenSSF, but that's mostly through the standards and things that are put out. And they tried to get standards for the IEEE and ACM to be changed to include things that the Linux Foundation and the OpenSSF care about. So that, a curriculum would say, oh, you need to actually teach about, how to do secure coding, like how to fuzz things, how to use version control responsibly, how to test code and stuff like this, right? And they largely failed through that effort. But I think that what they've done, the approach is not the best approach. I think what they should do is the Linux Foundation has enough of a brand that it should frankly just go and say, like, this is going to be any program can apply to be certified by the Linux Foundation that it does open SSF, like, open software supply chain secure development. And it should be certified to say it does effective cloud native development. And then the LF should be out there, you know, banging the drum and saying all the good things about these universities. When you write a grant proposal, you know, and Langdon's program has been certified in, you know, Boston's program certified in, you know, cloud native, I don't know, whatever they would call the certification for it, but has been certified for cloud native, then, you know, Chris Anichek writes a letter of support for your organization's grant proposal, and that helps you get funding from the National Science Foundation.
Right.
And, you know, things like this are, I think, quite easy to do. And also my plan with this is I think I can get the Linux Foundation to give student and even some faculty scholarships to attend KubeCon or other conferences for free in exchange for them participating in this. I think they can help to connect universities up with adjuncts who are highly skilled from the community who want to teach these things. So if you have a school that's very willing, but doesn't really have the talent, you can find people that are quite good for this. So, you know, but I think what my ask for sort of this group is, I think, a very easy ask, because I think it's what we're basically trying to do, is sort of two things. So one is that we make some number of modules over the next probably year is fine, but we make at least like a couple of modules. And we can probably get some support from people at the LF if we know what we need their help with. The second ask is that in about a year or so, we come up with curriculum standards for what it means to certify a program to be cloud native or whatever else. And I can show examples of this because, for instance, NYU went through this process for, like, the NSA has a couple of different certifications they do. Lots of other organizations do certifications. And this will not get everybody. This will not get like every school. The top schools, like, frankly, like the most
Yours and
ones,
mine
don't care, because
right.
like you having their certification like helps your certification more than it helps the school. No one's going to be like, well, I was going to go to, you know, to like Columbia over, you know, NYU, you know, and I decided Columbia because Columbia has the Linux Foundation certification and NYU doesn't, right? But it definitely helps schools that are kind of a little bit lower down that are trying to compete in a more crowded market. And we'll get a lot of those folks, and we'll get a lot of the kind of community colleges, I think, to pick up on this. And then as that starts to happen, by doing things like having these letters of support appear in people's NSF grants, and people on panels start to see this, I think it'll start to percolate up to the Research One institutions. So that's my general pitch. I'm going to have meetings with Chris and Amkar, who lead the, you know, CNCF and Open SSF on Monday. I'll also talk with Jim Zemlin after I've spoken with them about it and make sure everybody's aligned. So from this group, what are the thoughts?
So I think it's a good idea. I think you know, I think you're right. The adoption is going to be, you know, first at, I mean, in a sense, it'll actually help drive you know, kind of consumption. So I think that'd be a good thing. And, you know, maybe even contribution. So, you know, I think it's like I said, I think it's a really interesting idea. I don't know. Yeah, I would like to see your examples or whatever. Like I'm you know, I kind of understand how you might approach it. And, you know, would you also think, is it an accreditation, or is it also like with some sort of, you know, kind of exam that says, hey, I have met the criteria, you know, as well.
Yeah, I'm also going to post this in the higher ed channel too. So there's a couple ways this can work, and some organizations pick one or the other. Some certify a program and say, like, Boston University's computer science program is certified to do this, right? and so on. Some of
Mhm.
them are things that a student has to take certain classes or do a certain thing, and then the certification is sort of theirs. They get like a certificate from the LF that goes along with their degree, effectively.
Mhm.
Where it's like, oh, the LF is also certified that I am have this skill set or have done this thing, right? So basically, that's largely up for discussion. I don't think I think that we need the program part for sure, because the programs need to certify their classes, but whether it's, something that is optional, only given to certain students, or is for the entire program, may also depend on, is this is the concept, like I would imagine for cloud, right? Cloud is something that I don't believe your school requires, and certainly mine does not. I'm not aware of many schools that require a cloud computing class as part of a degree. And so, more likely than not, when you did it, it would be a thing that the student would have to take, like the cloud computing class. And then if there's other concepts that are not covered there, like maybe they need a security class also for some aspect of it or whatever else, but they would need courses that cover certain topics. And then when they do that, then the LF would provide them that certificate. But for something like OpenSSF, where it's supposed to be about secure coding, you can imagine that a university would just add a little bit of content into a few lectures that are required, and then all students going through the program would obtain that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think. Well, I think our what they call like, so what BU calls the Met school, the Metropolitan School, or what a lot of people call an extension school. So the kind of night school of the university. I think there is a cloud comp sci branch, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's a certification program or what exactly. I think there is one, but yeah, I don't think Core CS has one. We have something in the neighborhood in data science land, because we have this kind of like in the field concept versus theoretical, but not specifically focused on cloud. But yeah, exactly. I think that would be interesting, because I think you could. I think it'd be very appealing to students, and as a result, it would be appealing to universities, right, or appealing to faculty. So I think it might be worth going down. Plus, I think it would actually kind of help to accomplish our mission, right? Whether it's really doing it or not, but it would certainly take a student in the right direction, and get them more able to perform at the right level when they kind of walk into a job, where they're doing modern development, right? Versus
Right.
the students we mostly see, right, who they've done some Python scripts, but they don't really understand. Like, I like at a 500 level course, I still have to explain to them what a port is about, when communicating between machines. Like, it's just they don't see, like, everything's in one place, for most of their computer science degree. And they might know the theory stuff, right? They may have like learned about like the concept of Raft, right? But they don't really understand how they would make that go aside from the algorithm,
Right. Okay, so I know Sharon Goldberg pretty well. You know her at
At BU?
Yeah, I think so.
Don't.
She's
We all type.
on like taking a leave of absence now, doing a she's at BU, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. So I'm not strictly in computer science. So, and I'm also relatively new. So there are definitely CS people who I don't know.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I can't find them.
All right. So I can probably have a conversation with her at some point and try to see, even she's definitely not going to be able to put any real cycles into this. But if you're someone she can vouch for on the BU and to help to do this, for the CS department and elsewhere, then they are would probably be quite interested, would be my guess. But if you're just, you know, some random person who they're not really connected with, and you come in and pitch this, it'll feel a little different than sharing like, you know, a known entity saying, hey, this would be good to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we certainly have, I mean, we certainly have some people like that. You know, so I don't know if you know Azar Bastavros, but he's mostly he's always been kind of more networking, but he's the, you know, so I'm not actually part of the college, right? I'm actually part of what's called a faculty, right? And so, but he's the equivalent of my dean, but he's actually an associate provost, so he's kind of like the equivalent of the dean, you know, kind of. And yeah, it's weird. But so, you know, he definitely has a lot of background. Mark Cravella, you know, there's a lot of people I know who I think if I kind of went and kind of pitched it to them, they would be like, yeah, sign us up, you know, or, you know, we'll write a letter of support, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, and really, okay. So really, my things I need from this group, I think sorry, Corey, did you have something you wanted to say also?
Oh, no, yeah, I just agree with what Langdon was saying, that any type of certification or accreditation would go further to be able to gain more of an audience for what we're doing. So yeah, I would definitely agree with this approach. I don't know how much politicking you're gonna have to do, but
Leave it to me. If we fail there, then nobody has to do anything. One of the big things that I learned early on is make something so that it's either a failure and not a lot of time, or it's a success disaster, where it's so successful that then you get overworked, because then no one wants you to drop the ball and they'll throw resources at it. But if you ask for resources up front, it's just not really going to happen. So I'm planning to, you know, so basically what I'm hearing from this group is there would be interested in this group coming up with a curriculum for certification, curriculum certification aspect. And you can follow what I think the OpenSSF will probably be ready to do this first. We could look at what they did. I shared an example from the NSA. And then also we're interested in creating like these open modules that could be used and help to get more penetration, make it easier for people to get in and do this and actually get their programs to work. So I think that's what I'm hearing, which I'm really glad to hear from everybody. Catherine, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think it sounds really interesting. And because of course that's not my world, so I don't I had actually one question. So basically, if it's positioned the way you just described, and like with that collaboration and tension of certification and so on, that's something where the institutions would be willing to as well to have people work on that as well to help develop it? Or is it like something the curriculum, because like our issue was always that everyone, well, first of all, it's a small group, and like really getting starting and finding time to, because like a curriculum is a lot of work, right? And getting the ball rolling was always our kind of the problem. But that feels like, okay, that could be like a program and would have support from institutions.
So imagine this, right? Okay, so you're off, you're doing your own thing, you've written some awesome software, okay? And I tell you, hey, you know, there's this like badging program that's going to judge your software. And if your software is good, according to this badge, you get a gold star on your GitHub page. And you're like, I don't know what a gold star does, but you know what? Let me just see what happens if I try this. Do I get a gold star? And you find out, well, you almost got a gold star. You have to fix one little thing. You know, you had some internal loopback socket communication that didn't do mutual TLS because for whatever reason, you didn't think it was needed. And so then you go and you turn that on, and now you get the gold star, right? And you get to brag about that kind of by having that star up on your GitHub. That's effectively what's happening here, is universities are going to already have a ton of material that almost fits. And they're going to be missing like a few tiny things. And if we provide open copies of those tiny things and make it, that makes it easier for them to do this. But even if we don't have them, a lot of universities will build those things. And we can even encourage them when they build them to make them open. Like, hey, maybe you get to come to KubeCon and talk about the modules that you've added, right? And we get there's we can have carrots for this. And I think that would also accelerate this module growth and development and things like that. If, I have to say that there's going to be more than us if they get to go to KubeCon and do fun stuff, if they develop a free module for anybody to use. And then that can help other people get that gold star, which is eventually what we want. Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. No, and I do think it's great. And I do think, I don't know, I do think that it should be, and I hope that it's also appealing for people to kind of go and talk about that and just tell how great, like the great work that they've done, that is appealing, right? And there's a lot that basically within the CNCF can be done that is basically free, like that can be really appealing. Hey, we're putting you on stage, like you get to have this, like your personal brand. So there are all these things that kind of like, so I feel it is, instead of like just within your university, people know about your work. And I do think what I do like about the certifications too is that it exposes the students as well to the organization. Like if it's just like a curriculum, it's like they don't really know where it came from, or like whether they're told it came from an open source or not is up to the faculty, right? But like the person who's teaching the class. But like showing that where there is this organization, it is certified, and then like really making people curious, and maybe that's also gonna get more interest from students to contribute, right? Because it is a really exciting world and community out there, but most students probably don't even know it exists, right? So it's like about creating these little breadcrumbs where people can go, it's like, oh, there's this and this, and it's like, oh, that's a whole new world. So they don't have to discover that only once they're in the in the workforce, right?
Right,
So
right, exactly.
That's what I like about that. It's like the brand. It's like, oh, that is something that's cool, right?
Exactly. And we can, I think it's going to create this like hamster wheel effect that's going to pull a lot more of higher ed in, actually quite quickly. So I want to get the ball rolling down the hill, and then basically when it starts to become a success disaster, let Chris and everybody throw money at the problem and bring other people in and help out and just do my little part. So I think that this group and the kind of work we're doing here is a really important part of getting that ball rolling. So I'm glad everybody's supportive.
And I do that approach too. Just create a situation and then let people deal with it. it's just like, okay, this is happening now. So what do we do? And then you figure it out, right? So what are the next steps, like in terms of the next meeting?
So my view is that at least related to this, I'm going to meet with Chris and Amkar next week. My guess is that they'll both be supportive. I am asking for actual things from both of them, like to commit resources, but I think they'll probably both do it. And assuming that's true, then I'll go also talk to Jim and make sure that all the important, I think those are the most important people to have aligned. One thing I also want to mention here, just so that everybody's aware, is the the training course part of the LF is probably going to feel pretty territorial about this. And I've tried to explain to them before, I don't think they really understand why higher ed isn't using any of their stuff. And I've kind of tried to explain that, and I'm still not sure they really get it. But I think that, us also helping to spread that message is pretty useful. I think it can be used in certain contexts more at the kind of, I gave example tar before, more for the schools that want to show the command line options for tar rather than explain how, compression works and stuff like this. I think at that level, there is a lot of overlap, but I think at the higher ed, there's almost none. And so I think that we have a chance to get this other kind of flywheel moving and pulling and doing things. And if people happen to ask anyone here about why aren't we doing more with the classes, then that, I think it's important to be a little more clear.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have the exact same experience with like the Red Hat Academy or the Red Hat, kind of content, very much the same way. It's like, here's how to be a RHEL sysadmin, which is not really something that fits into most, kind of university courses. So at least in response to the kind of LF training side, I actually usually just talk about it in terms of, we're not really trying to teach people how to build Kubernetes. We're trying to teach people what you would put on top of Kubernetes or what you would, use it for. But I think I wonder if it would be beneficial to kind of add the aspect you're talking about, which is kind of the, like I like your example, but kind of we're trying to show them the root cause or the root, what the reason is for this thing or the theoretical aspects of it, not just the tactical practitioner version of it. And so that's why it's different than the LF training.
Great. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Cool. All right. So are there other topics we should cover in the 9 minutes we have left? Or are we good for the moment? I have not been taking very good notes. I just realized, but maybe what we can do is, once you have, kind of that meeting and, and maybe we have like, a paragraph or something that kind of says this is kind of the idea, then we can kind of put it on, like we can basically put almost like add that to the charter or add that to the mission or wherever it belongs.
I have it drafted, but since it has asks in there and I don't know what they're going to say yes and no to, I'm going to wait for them to
totally
decide before I make it public.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And like, I guess I meant more like this group's involvement in the sense of like, hey, this group is, we're trying to put these modules together, but hey, we're also going to try to look for a way to, certify that, that people are consuming these modules and therefore, they're the students who are walking out of, programs that meet their certification are, ready for, I don't know, cloud data development or some garbage like that. That's kind of what I was thinking, like that part of it, not so much the mechanics, like not so much the brass tacks, which is what I think you're doing that primarily from the OpenSSF side, right?
Yep, exactly.
I did not realize that Arun was the chair of that now, but I just ran into him not too long ago. But yeah, and I will definitely look or ask around, kind of start talk about kind of some people with some big names to back some proposal like this, because we do have a fair number of them, and some of them I know. I just didn't happen to know one of them. So and I need to make more friends.
Sounds good. And to be clear, I think that the lift from your side internally at your institution is actually pretty small, other than the fact that people have to not veto it, and you'll do all the work, and it will probably take you a couple days of actual work, but it'll be a couple days, not like a week. Even. You just need basically like syllabi and slides from professors who teach certain classes, and then you'll say, oh, this matches this, this matches this, this matches this. And then,
I actually have already a lot of those. One thing I don't know what this is like at other universities, but one thing about BU and particularly the union I'm with is it is very sherry as far as content is concerned across classes, which I think is not standard. But
No.
generally speaking, yeah. So yeah, we're generally, especially within the faculty that I'm in, the computing and data sciences, it's kind of like, I wouldn't call it a bylaw, but part of the ethos that we're trying to set up in this relatively new group is that we share a lot. So that helps.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Doesn't mean we don't have politics, to be clear.
It's everywhere.
Everyone wins, right? It's like sometimes people don't get it, but it's like if we all share and like, but yeah, politics sometimes are in the way of.
Yeah,
that,
you,
but
you are
yeah.
speaking to a group of people who are participating in an open source project. So
Yeah,
yeah, we hopefully get it. All right, cool. Well, then why don't we wrap it up here, and I will go make my lunch because I'm hungry.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. And Justin, congrats on, I guess that's new, the position, right? Like the
Oh, the
Yeah,
open
congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations.
congrats on that.
Great.
And
Thank you.
Speaking of politicking,
See you later.
Go get
Talk to you soon.
them.
see ya.
Bye.